In the skies today, a scene unfolded that shook the balance of power and sent waves of panic through Russia. Out of nowhere, NATO's F-15 fighter jets scrambled at lightning speed. Their mission razor-sharp intercept two Russian Su-30 warplanes. Picture this: on one side, Russia's formidable jets cutting through the clouds, and on the other, NATO's legendary interceptors locking on with unmatched precision. For a moment, the sky itself felt like a battlefield where two global powers were staring each other down. But the burning question is, why did NATO move so fast? Did Russia deliberately cross the line, testing the patience of the alliance? Or was this a calculated show of strength, a message from Moscow that the skies belong to them? From every angle, the stakes are clear. One side is proving it's always ready, while the other insists no boundary will ever restrain its reach. And as this drama unfolds above the clouds, one can't help but wonder, what happens when the next confrontation isn't just a warning? Asterisk each second in that sky felt heavier than the last, as radar screens lit up and pilots gripped their controls with absolute focus. The Russian Su-30s, known for their power and maneuverability, weren't just flying, they were signaling. Every move said, "We're here, and we're not afraid." But NATO's F-15s answered with equal force, racing through the air like guardians of the alliance, refusing to let even a shadow slip by unchecked. Tension crackled like electricity. Imagine the silence inside those cockpits, broken only by radio commands and the roar of engines at supersonic speed. One wrong decision, one pull of the trigger, and the entire region could ignite into chaos. Both sides knew it, and the other was willing to back down. This wasn't just about two jets or even two militaries. It was a warning shot to the world. NATO declaring, "We will defend every inch of airspace," and Russia countering, "Our presence cannot be ignored." The question now isn't what happened in that sky, it's what comes next. Because if today's intercept was only the beginning, then tomorrow might bring a confrontation no one can control. Asterisk. The clash in the skies was more than just a brief intercept. It was a chilling reminder of how fragile the line between peace and war has become. As the F-15s closed the distance, their targeting systems locked on, and in that instant, every pilot knew that history could change with a single command. The Su-30s, sleek and aggressive, didn't back away. Instead, they held their course, pushing the standoff into a dangerous dance where pride, power, and provocation were all at stake. Observers on the ground say this wasn't a random encounter, it was a test. A test of NATO's resolve, a test of Russian nerve, and perhaps a test of how far the world can be pushed before it breaks. Why else would Moscow send two Su-30s so close to NATO's watchful eyes? Was it a show of dominance, a silent message, or simply the beginning of a larger strategy that we have yet to see unfold? Inside NATO command, the mood was tense but unshaken. Generals watched the radar screens, calculating every possible outcome. They knew one mistake could ignite a chain reaction across Europe. And yet, they allowed their fighters to press forward because retreat would mean weakness. And weakness is something NATO cannot afford to show. For Russia, the gamble was just as dangerous. The Su-30s are symbols of their military pride. But sending them into contested skies raises questions. Is Moscow preparing the world for something bigger? Is this part of a long game to chip away at NATO's confidence, one intercept at a time? Or was it meant to spark fear, to remind the West that Russia's shadow will always linger just beyond the horizon? High above the clouds, the two forces remained locked in a deadly silence. No missiles were fired, no shots exchanged, but sometimes the absence of firepower is even louder. Because every second that passed carried the weight of, what if one pilot twitched? What if one command was misheard? What if this wasn't the last time? Analysts warn that this won't be the final chapter. Intercepts like these are becoming more frequent, and each one increases the risk of miscalculation. It's no longer a question of if another close call will happen, it's a matter of when. And the next time, the world may not be lucky enough to see both sides turn away. So as the Su-30s finally veered off and the F-15s returned to base, the skies grew quiet again. But that silence is deceptive. Beneath it lies an unspoken truth. The Cold War never truly ended, it simply changed its battlefield. And now, the front line isn't just borders on a map, but the open skies where every flight could be the spark of something far greater. The world watches and waits, holding its breath, because everyone knows the story isn't over. It's only beginning. Asterisk, the silence that followed the intercept was almost haunting. For those who witnessed it, whether through the radar screens in NATO command centers or the faint trails cutting across the skies, it felt like a pause before the storm. The Su-30s eventually turned back, but the message had already been delivered. Russia is willing to test, to provoke, and to push boundaries. The F-15s had scrambled in record time, proving NATO's readiness. But readiness alone is not always enough to keep the peace. Every pilot who flew that day knew the weight of the moment. Inside the cockpits, their hands steady on the controls. They weren't just flying, they were carrying the hopes of their nations, the burden of deterrence, and the heavy knowledge that a single miscalculation could unleash chaos. A wrong maneuver, a misunderstood radio call, or even an accidental lock-on could have sparked a chain of events that no one could stop. That's what makes these encounters so terrifying. They aren't just military exercises. They're tightropes walked at the edge of war. The truth is, incidents like these are increasing. Interceptions between Russian jets and NATO aircraft have been reported more and more often. Each time, it's framed as routine, nothing unusual, just standard defense. But behind those carefully chosen words lies a much darker reality. Every intercept builds tension. Every close call leaves scars, and every maneuver tightens the knot of mistrust between East and West. One day, the rope may snap, and the question the world is asking is simple. Who will make the first irreversible move? Will Russia push harder, sending more aircraft closer, daring NATO to act? Or will NATO's patience wear thin, with pilots ordered to stand their ground no matter the risk? Both sides claim they want to avoid war, but both sides continue to act as though war is already here, just waiting for the right spark. Think about the psychology of this game. For Russia, the Su-30s were a statement. We can fly where we choose, and no one can stop us. For NATO, the F-15s were a counter-statement. Cross the line, and we will be there in seconds. Neither side fired a shot, but both sides fired a message, and sometimes words in the sky are more dangerous than weapons. Behind the scenes, intelligence analysts are piecing together the bigger picture. Why now? Why these jets at this time in this place? Some believe it's connected to Russia's ongoing drills with Belarus, a reminder that Moscow has allies and intends to keep NATO guessing. Others suggest it's about testing NATO's response times, gathering information on how quickly the alliance can scramble and intercept. If that's true, then this wasn't just a random flight, it was reconnaissance disguised as provocation. Meanwhile, NATO leaders are under pressure. Citizens across Europe are asking, how safe are our skies? Politicians know the answer is fragile. Every time Russian jets cross a boundary, confidence in security trembles. And NATO must respond firmly because hesitation invites further tests. But firmness comes with risk, and risk when armed jets are involved is a razor's edge away from disaster. Now, let's pause and imagine this from the ground. You're standing in a Baltic state, Estonia or Lithuania perhaps, looking up at contrails in the distance. You know Russian jets are there, and you know NATO fighters are chasing them. You feel pride that your allies protect you, but you also feel the chill of what protection really means, that you are living on the fault line of global confrontation. For those countries on the edge of NATO's shield, these aren't headlines. They are daily reminders that peace is borrowed time, the most unsettling part. Neither Russia nor NATO seems willing to de-escalate. Russia continues to fly, to push, to provoke. NATO continues to scramble, to shadow, to respond. Each side insists it's the other's fault, and in the middle, the rest of the world watches with growing fear. The Cold War may have ended on paper, but in the skies above Europe, it never really ended at all. It just changed form. So what happens next? What if next time the intercept is closer? What if a Russian pilot decides not to turn back? What if NATO fighters lock on and refuse to disengage? These aren't wild fantasies, they are scenarios military planners prepare for every single day. And with each new intercept, Those scenarios creep closer to becoming reality. As the Su-30s disappeared back into Russian airspace and the F-15s returned to base, NATO commanders would have breathed a sigh of relief, but only a short one. Because they know, and we all know, this was just one encounter in a series that's far from over. The skies remain contested, the tension remains alive, and the question remains unanswered. The next time Russian jets meet NATO fighters face to face, will the world witness another warning? Or the first spark of something far more dangerous?